Hello guys, welcome to Software Testing Mentor and RCV Academy. Today I'm here again with Snehal, who is a fresher, who is actually not a fresher. Basically, she has a lot of teaching experience into the computer science field, and she is now trying to venture into the software testing field from her teaching career. And she has been studying a lot about the software testing. She has approached me to conduct interview on the manual testing. So we'll be going through the manual testing questions with Snehal today. So let's welcome Snehal. So hi, Snehal, welcome. And how are you?
Hi, sir. Hello. I'm fine, sir.
So Snehal, before we go further, I would like to mention that this video will be recorded and posted on my YouTube channel for other viewers. Are you fine with that?
Yes, sir. I'm okay with it.
Cool. So Snehal, as I see your resume, you have also mentioned about your teaching experience. So can you briefly tell something about yourself and your experience till now in teaching and in learning software testing?
Okay. Sir, I'm Snehal Talele. I'm currently staying in Mumbai. I am fresher. I had 2 years of experience in teaching, 1 year of experience in degree college, and 1 year of experience in junior college. Basically, my position was then assistant professor, and where I used to teach the programming languages to the students of BSc IT, BSc CS, the BCom even, and the BCA students. The programming languages like C, C++, then HTML, JavaScript, DBMS, MySQL. I teach theory to the students as well as the practical. And currently, I'm thinking to move into the software testing. I have interest in software testing field. And so now I want to move my career into software testing. I'm looking forward the opportunity. If I get placed in a company, then obviously it will be a great platform for me to show my skills and attitude in that company. And also it will help me to learn a lot of new things and also for that organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
That's it about me.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very nice, Snehal, around that. In terms of introductory, your introduction that you have covered, very good. You can just structure it a little bit more in terms of past, present and future, why you want to join a particular organization. Watch my previous videos. I have explained all of that in those. But overall, your introduction is absolutely fine. And you also mentioned that you want to venture into the software testing, you want to get into software testing, and you're passionate about it. Now, once you say you're passionate about it, interviewer will ask why you are passionate about it. Can you explain? So I would ask the same question, basically, why do you want to get into software testing from the teaching background, and why are you passionate about it?
Sir, from when I was student, from itself, I love the software engineering. Where is the theory of about all the software testing? So from that time also, I started thinking that I want to move the career in software testing. But because of some problems, I have to move in teaching field. Now I get the opportunity to enter into that organization. So just I want to grab that opportunity.
Right. Okay. So some personal factors which were there, because of that you moved into teaching, and then you are now basically want to move into the software testing because this is the right time that you think in your career, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right. So let's go ahead with some of the manual testing questions, and I'll basically ask a very very basic question, and those will be related to whatever you have learned till now. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
can you name some of the black box test design techniques?
Yes, boundary value analysis, then partitioning, equivalence class partitioning, error guessing, state transition, and decision table techniques.
Right.
These all are the black box design techniques.
Excellent. Yeah. And what exactly do you understand by black box testing? Now you have explained about black box test design technique. What exactly is black box testing?
Black box testing means we test the feature or the functionality of an application. That is what what the black box design technique. While doing the black box design technique, the tester they don't have the knowledge of the internal code structure path. Means overall, they don't have the any programming knowledge. They just check the main functionalities working fine or not. Let's take the simple example, that is the login page. Suppose I have an application and the one of the module is the login page. So as a tester, as a black box design testing, I will test only the functionality of an application. I will not go through and the search for the what are the codings we have done and the internal path and the structure. Mainly focus is on the functionality. That is what the black box design techniques,
Right.
sorry,
Yeah.
black box testing.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. Yeah. So you are not aware about the internal as a black box testing. You are not aware of the internal structure, and you are not actually interacting with the code and testing it. So any functionality you are testing for which you are not aware of the internal working of the code, you are just providing the input and verifying the output is basically a black box. So black box in general, just consider it a black box, right? So absolutely correct answer. Yeah. Cool. So let's move on to the next question. So what do you understand by test coverage?
Test coverage. We write the test cases in a such order that we should cover all the test coverage. Means for writing the test cases, there are some design techniques are there. You have to follow that design techniques, and using the design techniques you will get the 100% full test coverage. Means you will not miss any functionality, any requirement. So that is what the test coverage is.
Right. So you need to do you want to add any more points, or should I just provide a feedback on
No,
this?
no, sir. I know that much only about test coverage.
Okay, yeah. So you are correct, but you are not able to like rephrase things properly. You know stuff. I can understand from your answer. So in order to rephrase or basically phrase this answer, you can simply say a coverage. I mean, test coverage. There is a word coverage, right? In general, if you understand the coverage meaning of the
Covering all the
coverage.
scenarios.
Yeah, so basically when we talk about test coverage, it's nothing but what your test cases are covering in terms of requirements. So the source of truth of any software is basically a requirement document, right? Or the set of requirements. So when we talk about test coverage, you write your test cases, and then whether those test cases or what percentage of or what percentage of requirement is being covered by the test cases that you have designed or developed, right? So you have explained correctly that there are test design techniques that you use, and you ensure that you write the set of test cases which cover the requirement, and there is nothing missed as such in
Yes.
terms of say for example there are 10 requirements and you do not have test cases for 2 of the requirements. So that test coverage ensures that your requirements are being covered properly,
Covered.
right?
Total.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, if we talk about, say, what exactly test coverage does for you, can you explain a little bit? So, what does it help you to find out?
It allow you to find out the defects using this test coverage. Means you can say the the defects. That defects can be a high priority defect or the most critical defect or blocker defect. If you cover the all the test scenarios or the test coverage.
Okay, so here test coverage will help you to identify the areas of requirements that are not covered, right, by your test cases. That's first of its benefit. So when I say what
Okay.
this test coverage will help you to do is, it will first help you to identify the requirements which have either less coverage, less number of test cases associated with it based on the importance of that requirement, or whether that requirement itself is not covered at all, right? So that's the first thing. Then it helps you to ensure that the requirements are having proper coverage, and if there are less number of test cases cases you add those. If there are some scenarios missing, you add those, right? So these are some of the benefits basically you can mention. So go through test coverage,
Okay.
and your answer is mostly correct, but try to phrase it in a more structured way, what exactly coverage is and then what advantages it will bring, right? Because when somebody will ask what is test coverage, they might also ask what test coverage advantages are, or what are the pros and cons, something like that, right? So that might
Okay, sir.
come. Okay, all right. Now let's move on. What do you understand, or basically what is the difference between verification and validation?
Okay. Verification. In verification, we verify or you can say the review, the CRS, customer requirement specification, software requirement specification, high level design, low level design. We only do the verification part. Review part we done only in verification. But in the validation, what we do in validation, we test the functionality by executing the test cases. That is what the validation. First we perform the verification, then we go for the validation. Basically verification is an, you can say that it's a static testing, and the validation is a part of dynamic testing. And also the verification is done by the developer, and the validation is done by the tester.
Mhm. Okay, so verification can be, I mean, it's not specific to a particular role, especially if you are talking about, I mean, nowadays we follow Agile. So there will
Yes,
be blogs which you might have gone through that will say that this is specific to testers or this is specific to developers. Nowadays, that fine line is not anymore. So when we say
okay.
verification, it can still be, I mean, testers are very much involved, or the whole team is basically involved. And your answer, apart from the role thing, is absolutely correct. Your verification is more of a static, like reviews, static testing, like reviews, walkthroughs, inspections, where most of the team members are there or the relevant stakeholders are there, and you check that the documentation or the design is fulfilling the end user needs, and there are no inherent issues within the documentation and design itself. Okay, and then when
Yes,
you
sir.
talk about validation, you mentioned that yes, it's basically the dynamic testing where you execute the code and then you actually verify that the functionality is working as expected. So absolutely correct. And you can also add the answers there. These 2 points are very important when somebody asks verification, validation. So verification answers the question whether I am building the product right, and then validation answers, am I building the right product?
Right product.
Right. So just add these. So
Yes.
these 2 points, because these are very sort of, these will enhance your answer or improve your answer. Okay, but otherwise your answer is correct in terms of verification and validation. Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right. Now let's understand on the similar lines of verification and validation, from which particular development methodology this verification validation came through. So there are
From
different.
VNV model.
Right. Yes. Good. Good. Yeah. Cool. And why was V&V model introduced when there was a waterfall model already?
Because in waterfall model or in spiral model, there was the drawbacks. Like in waterfall model, once the requirement study and feasibility study is done, the requirements are freeze. You cannot change the requirement. You have to go through the whole cycle till the maintenance, and then only you can change the requirement. So that is what the drawback. But in the spiral also, the spiral is also the look like a waterfall. How? Because the spiral is a cycle. Now once after the every cycle, it is allowed to change the requirement. Within that cycle, you cannot change the requirement in the spiral. But so to remove this drawback, this VNV model comes into the picture.
Yeah, so they realized that the waterfall model, it's more of a sequential approach, and once you close one phase, only then you can enter next phase. So
Next.
there were lots and lots of drawbacks, and in order to address those drawbacks, they came up with V&V model, which is still had some drawbacks, and that's why we came to Agile later. So that's absolutely correct. Yeah. Now, why is static testing important?
Basically, in static testing, what we do the verification process. If we do verification process at the early stage itself, then basically the most defect we can catch at the early stage itself. Also, the verification basically at the early stage itself, we try to find out the customer requirements because on the later stage it is very difficult to again change that module, but nowadays agile has come and agile changed that VNV model, so I think these two are the main
Yeah.
points.
Yes. Yes. So you have covered, like early defect detection and correction. So that's very good point. Then you have also covered reduced, cost, because the earlier you find the issues or defects,
Issues.
it's easier in terms of time and cost to fix that. So you have covered that. You can also add a couple of more points that it reduces the overall
Okay.
time span, right?
Time.
So if the development cycle you find a defect in the actual testing phase, then it has to, and if it is a design related defect, you have to go back and change the design,
Back and change the requirement.
right?
Yes.
So design and
Yes.
then
Yes.
development and then again. So it's a lot of work and it will delay the times. If it is a requirement related defect, then it's even worse. You have to go and fix it. You don't know how many modules you have to fix, right? So
Yes.
your understanding is absolutely correct. You just need to add as many points as you can, and I'm pretty sure with the level of, I think it's your teaching experience that has given you very good exposure around the systems and the
Yes, sir.
processes. So that's really good. Okay, let's move on. Any questions till now?
No, sir.
Okay. So what are some of the static testing techniques that you are aware of?
Static testing techniques.
So you covered about the dynamic
I'm
testing or
not
black box
recalling.
testing. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Like reviews.
Yes, reviews, inspection, walkthroughs,
That's correct.
meetings. These
Yes.
are the all activities we perform in the verification
Right.
or
Yes.
in the static testing.
Static testing, right? So
Yes.
because you mostly do the reviews, and reviews can be informal, or the technical reviews, the walkthroughs, the inspections, right? Or there are tools as well to do the static analysis, or tools like to check the control flow of the code or data flow, so you can do static
Okay.
analysis on that, right? So that's correct. You were just not able to recall that. So these are some of the static testing techniques. And what are some of the types of acceptance testing? So first, explain me what exactly is an acceptance testing, and then explain some of the types of acceptance testing.
Okay. Acceptance testing means this is the test end-to-end testing where customer use the software for a particular period of time, and after that he gives the feedback back to the team. Basically, in acceptance testing, which is done by the end user at the end user in the real time environment. That is what the acceptance testing is. Basically, there are the two types of to do the acceptance testing: alpha testing and the beta testing. Alpha testing, basically we do the alpha testing before the software is going to launch in the product market, sorry, and we do the beta testing when the your software at the product market. Alpha testing, we basically alpha testing is done by the developer, no, sorry, testing team, and the beta testing usually done by the end user who is using that product. Means we particularly we release the product to the limited number of user, and that limited number of user, they use the product, sorry, they use the software and give feedbacks to the testing team, and accordingly they change the requirement. If customer satisfies it well, then it's okay. Then it provide then it give access to the all the peoples. Alpha testing basically which cover only positive testing, and beta testing covers black box testing and white box testing. And at the beta testing we do only black box testing.
Okay. So overall,
And also
yeah, go ahead.
and also we do alpha testing at the development site, and we do the beta testing at the real time environment with the real end user. They use that software.
Right.
And user acceptance testing, it is also called as the final acceptance testing, and red box acceptance testing.
Okay, good. So overall, mostly correct, not 100%, but mostly correct, right? So the in initial lines you mentioned that it is done only by the real customers, which is I think maybe you didn't try to mean that it is just by the customers. It can be a mix of internal staff as well as the customer, right? So user acceptance testing can be done within the development side, which you already covered, like alpha testing, where the business stakeholders as such. So usually on the ground, when we talk about UAT, it's done by the business stakeholders of the company. So say, for example, you are working in a banking industry. So from the banking departments, the key business people will come through, and then there'll be a team which will coordinate the user acceptance testing with those business stakeholders, and the actual business users who will be using that software will be doing the UAT. So that's the internal. But now say, for example, if this software needs to be released to external customer as well, where the beta testing comes in picture, and you would have noticed that like Gmail keeps releasing beta. Initially it used to
WhatsApp
happen,
even.
yeah, even like WhatsApp. So they choose a set of customers where they release a particular feature in the production, and it's just set of customer. They gather the feedback, they fix any issues, and then they roll out to the wider audience. Now in terms of the types, you covered alpha and beta, but there are many other types like contract acceptance testing, regulation, or the compliance acceptance testing, right? So if you just browse through the internet, you will find many other types. And when we say contract acceptance testing, it's as the word contract is there, right? So as per the contract, whether software meets the contract requirements. Compliance, there are regulatory compliance, right? So for example, in India, if you have to launch a particular software, these are the regulations that your particular software has to meet. In Australia, these are the regulations. So that is regulation or compliance. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
these are different terms, but very simple things. These are, like once you know it, the actual testing is very complicated. When we talk about contract acceptance, when we talk about compliance, then we have to go through the compliance document and then make sure that our software meets all those criteria. But in terms of understanding that there are many other types of acceptance testing, you can go through Google around and at least understand the basic.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's move on. What do you understand by risk-based testing?
Risk based. Sir, I never heard this testing.
Okay. So this
Sorry,
is,
sir.
yeah, that's absolutely fine. So risk-based testing is very important. So what we'll do is I'll cover the details of risk-based testing once we finish this interview. Okay. So let's move on to the next
Yes, sir.
question, and I'll explain what is risk-based testing later. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what do you understand by test plan?
Test plan basically it consists of document where we documents what are the activities we are going to perform. All these we mention in the test plan. Basically in the test plan which consists of the objective, the scope, out of scope, then the tool selection. If you are using automation, you want to run the automation script, which automation tools you are going to use. Then the risk, what risk can be happen, and what will be the backup and mitigation plan to overcome that risk. Also the deliverables, what are the deliverables you are going to deliver to the customer. Then release notes, also the entry and exit criteria. All these things are mentioned in the test plan.
Right. Yeah, absolutely correct. So you can start with a general example around the planning, importance of planning, and then explain all these points that you have mentioned. So all your points are absolutely fine. You you can just start with why planning is important. And the test plan is basically planned to test a software, where we outline what will be the scope, what will be the approach, schedule, people who will be testing it, what we need to test. So all those things that you have mentioned, that like the template points, right? So absolutely correct.
Yes.
No problem with that. Okay,
Yes,
cool.
sir.
Let's move on to the next question. So what is the difference between forward and backward traceability? So what is requirement traceability first, and then what is the difference between backward and forward traceability?
Requirement traceability means the uh, make sure that for each and every requirement there should be an test cases. We should write test cases for each and every requirement. That is what the traceability matrix is. And forward and backward traceability matrix is. So sorry, I don't know that.
Okay, so this is also very, very important to understand about the requirement traceability matrix, because requirement traceability matrix, nowadays you do not create it manually, but automatically there are tools that will help you to generate. Now, what exactly this traceability matrix does is it helps you to ensure or get you a matrix of the coverage. So basically test coverage you can identify through the traceability matrix. So how many test cases are being written to the for the requirement. So when we talk about forward traceability, it's from the requirement how many test cases are associated. Then for those test cases you link the execution, so when you do the execution, and then how many defects are being raised. So that's the forward traceability. When you start from the top is the requirement, right? Requirement, test, execution, defects, whatever is linked. So that mapping is forward traceability. And when we say backward traceability, you would have identified it now, right? From the defect,
Yes.
execution,
Defect.
test, right? Which defect is linked to which test, and then which test is linked to which requirement. Why it is helpful? It helps you to see how much coverage or how many test cases are written for those requirements,
Requirements.
right? So like if the
Yes.
requirement is very critical, then you need to make sure that requirement is covered very properly. There are good number of test cases, and not only the number, they need to be the quality test cases with proper test design techniques, so that you get good coverage in terms of testing. All right,
Yes, sir.
cool. So this is very important, Snehal. So make sure that you understand traceability matrix. There are lots of blogs over the internet. Go through that. People have explained traceability with usage of the Excel sheets, and you will understand how you can create traceability matrix manually. But then there are tools like Zephyr in Jira is the tool that I have explained in my tutorial, how you can create the traceability matrix automatically, right? How that tool creates that. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Cool.
sir.
Let's move on to the next very important question. So, what do you do usually as a tester when you find a defect?
First of all, when I find any defect then first of all I will raise the defect, and I will see the priority of that defect. Is it the critical or blocker? And accordingly, I will after raising the defect, I will give it to the developer to fix the defect. After that, developer worked on that defect, fix the defect, and give it back to the tester to test it again to make sure that the whatever bug we have raised is still open or the closed.
Mhm. Okay, so there are usually two parts when you find a defect. There are two parts to it. First part is the analysis part, which you have missed. Second part is the actual things that you will perform in the project when you find the defect. Now, usually this is very tricky thing. When as a tester we find a defect, we just go ahead and log it, right? So before we go ahead and log it, the first thing is to basically analyze whether we are using the correct data, there is no test environment issue. We check the
Okay.
logs. Okay, so that analysis part, always make sure that with this particular defect question, you start with that. I'll do a bit of analysis. I'll check the logs that it's actually a defect, right? Because there might be instances where we find a defect, and the defect is because of some test environment issues. Maybe there is some service which is down, and because of that, we are not able to hit that service, and we are getting errors or issues, and we think that it is a defect. So do a little bit of analysis, check all our
Yes.
data and environment. Once we are sure as a tester, then we ensure that this is not a duplicate defect. Nobody has else in the team has logged it.
Else raise
Okay.
the defect.
And then go ahead with the second part that you have covered. That's absolutely correct. The second part. First part, make sure you always include that in your question.
Yes, sir.
These things will eventually, once you start working, you will pick up very quickly that, all these things, analysis and checking logs, all that is very easy to pick up. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
absolutely fantastic. The overall process that you have explained, that's really good. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question. What is globalization testing?
Sir, I don't know.
Okay.
Globalization.
Okay. All right. So let's move to the next question, and then I'll come back to this globalization and risk-based. What is a test closure and why it is important? Have you heard of test closure?
Yes. In the STLC life cycle, the end phase is the test closure. Basically, in the test closure, which consists of the execution reports, execution summary reports, defect reports, then also the post-mortem meeting or retrospective meeting. All these parts are included in this test closure. Basically, what we do, all these documents we provide to the customer after we deliver the software. So all this is what we done in this test closure.
Absolutely, yes. So this ensures that your testing is actually closed. You hand over the artifacts which you have all covered, like retrospective you have covered, what things we did properly, what we need to improve in the next cycle, so that all discussions happen in the retrospective. So absolutely correct, right? Now let's move to the next question. So basically, what do you understand by regression testing? And how is regression testing different from retesting?
Okay. Basically, regression testing means testing the unchanged feature of an application when we add some module or delete or modify, or we fix any defect that should not impact on the unchanged feature of an application. That is what the regression testing. Let's take the simple example. Suppose there is an application and there is a login module. Okay. Then there are the three options. Like you can log in by Gmail, login by Twitter, or login by LinkedIn. Suppose while testing, when I found the defect in the login by Gmail, so what I do, first of all, I will raise the defect, and after that, I will give it to the developer to fix that defect. As soon as developer fix the defect, then I will do the test. I will do the testing of that Gmail login by Gmail feature, as well as while testing I will make sure that while it should not impact my another feature like login by Twitter and login by LinkedIn. So basically in regression testing we make sure that other feature or functionality should not impact when I change the functionality in the unchanged functionality in that module. But in the retesting, what we do, suppose same example, when I found the defect in that login by Facebook, I give it to the developer will fix it, developer give it back to us, to the tester. Now I will do only the testing for that login by Gmail only. I will not test for this other two functionality. And that is what the retesting means, testing the failure functionality. That is what the retesting is.
Absolutely correct. Yes. And you explained with the example, that is really good. So always try to come up with the examples, because when you explain the examples, they differentiate you from other people who are just going in the interviews and explaining the theoretical concept. Okay, so that's absolutely fantastic. So now let's understand a little bit about the performance testing. Have you heard about the performance testing, and what do you understand by
Yes, sir.
performance testing? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Performance testing is testing the stability and response time of an application by applying some load. Is called as the performance testing. We are checking the stability. Stability means ability in stand with number of users. That is what the stability. And response time means the time at which you are requesting for particular page and you are getting the response. That is what the response time. Basically, you are checking for these two things. Also, you are checking the load by applying the load. That is what the performance testing. There are the various performance testing types are there, like load testing, stress testing, scalability testing, flood testing or volume testing, and last one is the soap testing.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. So you have covered most of the performance testing types there. Would you like to explain a bit more about load testing?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Load testing means testing the stability and response time of an application by applying some load which is less than or equal to design number of users. Let's take the simple example. Suppose there is an application where, and as per the requirement, it accept only 500 requests. Okay, so while doing load testing, what I will do, I will test that software by applying the less than 500. Means I will test for 500 request or less than 500 or 500 request, and we'll see and we'll see the output, or you will see the performance, how it behaves. That is what the load testing is.
Yeah, yeah. So like response time, you will see the performance, how the software is responding, right?
Responding, yes.
In when we have that desired amount of load that the software is
Load
built for.
on that
Yeah,
software.
yeah, cool. All right, absolutely. Okay, let's move to a little bit more questions. Still have few more minutes, so we'll cover a few more questions. So basically, are you comfortable a little bit with automation questions if I go ahead and ask?
No, sir. Actually, automation, I am not prepared for that. Actually, I am learning these things
Okay, it
from
will
just
be
now.
okay. It will be just very basic. So basically, what do you understand by automation testing?
Okay. Automation testing is simply the replacement of your manual testing. Suppose we do automation because if suppose there are the multiple test cases you want to run. So for that, you cannot run that manually. So to run that test cases, we use automation tool. Basically, the automations, we first write the automation script and then we run that script. That is what the automation. Basically, there are the various automation tools are available, like Selenium with Java. This is the one of the famous tool is for automation.
Right. Yeah. So automation, there is a misconception around automation that it's a replacement of manual testing. It replaces a part of it, but not completely. I mean,
Completely.
automation testers still do manual testing, and then it enhances the overall coverage. But your answer around automation testing, that you write scripts, and it could be any script. It's not just like Selenium and Java, like UI testing. It's basically your API testing. It doesn't matter how small your script is. If it reduces your manual effort, it could be your VB script, could be your Python script to
Python.
right. So any simple script which helps you to expedite or automate the manual process in your testing journey is automation testing. Now, because of Selenium and Java and Selenium and Python, people have just want to go into that particular mode, that if you know this, you just know the automation. But it's the overall journey in the overall software testing that you need to figure out as an automation tester, or as a tester. There is no automation or manual, I would say. As a tester, you should figure out what are the pain points, and then which tool, which script you will use to automate that. So just a bit of advice there. Okay, so your
Yes.
answer in terms of automation testing is fine, no problem with that. Now, what are different software development life cycles that you are aware of?
SDLC, waterfall model,
Mhm.
prototype model, spiral model,
Yeah.
VNV model.
Mhm.
Yes, that much only.
Okay. And what about the latest? I mean, are these any of
Agile
these?
model.
Yeah. So agile. What exactly? When you say agile, have you heard of Scrum?
Yes.
Okay. So what is Scrum? Have you read about it a little bit?
Yes, sir. I have some of the knowledge about it, but I don't know the detailed knowledge.
Okay.
Basically, Scrum. Basically, Scrum. They are the rules which is followed by the Agile methodology. Basically, in Agile methodology, the main focus is on the customer satisfaction, and in Agile methodology, we deliver the software in minimum span of time period. So that is what the biggest advantage of agile model. In agile model, basically developer and tester they works together, and there is the good communication between the developer, tester, as well as in with the customer. In agile methodology, there is the scrum master is there. Scrum master basically responsible for the delivery of the software within the short period of time. Also he keep track of the all the technical peoples, like he keep track of the status, is there any obstacle to them. So he just track all these people. That is what the scrum master. Then scrum master schedules a scrum meeting. In the scrum meeting, basically the scrum team members are there. With them they discussed about the what's the activity we are going to perform. Also they takes also what are the requirements we have to take from the product backlog. So all this they define in the scrum meeting. And in agile methodology there is the sprint. Basically sprint is a one cycle. Within that cycle, what we do, after every cycle we deliver the piece of software to the customer. Then customer use the software and give feedback to the team. The basically the scrum cycle period is of the 2 weeks. We after every 2 weeks we deliver the software to the customer. So it will be a great benefit for a customer, that they can get to know the software at the early stage itself. And accordingly he can change the requirement in every sprint. Suppose let's consider I have taken the 5 requirements. By collecting that 5 requirements we make a one sprint. Basically it's a software, a short software we deliver it to the customer. And the product backlog, as like in the SDLC waterfall model there is a cycle, one of the phase like requirement analysis. Same here is the product backlog. In product backlog the QA team basically QA team gathers the requirement from the customer, and they gathers the requirement from the customer. And basically this product backlog is a repository where you have all the requirements. And also in agile methodology there is a they also arrange the bug triage meeting. Basically in bug triage meeting, the developer, tester, they sit together and analyze the what are the bugs are open, which bugs are still open. They prioritize the bugs, which bugs we should fix immediately. So for this, they arrange the bug triage meeting.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think you are partially correct in terms of whole process, but I would appreciate the fact that you know so much, even though you haven't worked into any of the software projects, but you know so much about the Agile and Scrum. There are few things that are not correct as part of the understanding. So Scrum is a framework, you can say. Agile is the set of rules or set of values and principles. So when somebody says what is agile, agile is not a methodology or a framework to develop a software.
Yes.
It's the set of values and principles, and the agile values and principles are being embraced by different agile development methodologies. Like Scrum is one of it, Kanban is another, extreme programming if you have heard of, right? So nowadays you will,
DSCM.
yes, DSDM. So and then in terms of the overall process, most of your understanding is correct, but I would recommend that like testers don't go and gather the requirements. So it's a collaborative environment within the team. So usually the product owner is the one who gets or gathers the requirement, and then they can either document themselves or other people, or they can ask other people like business analysts within the team to document. But still, I would say your understanding is absolutely fantastic, considering that you haven't had any practical experience. Just go through and read a little bit more around Scrum. Go to scrum.org. It's a Scrum. There is a it's basically official Scrum website where you will get a Scrum guide. Just go through and read it, and you will get all the
Yes, sir.
clarity around Scrum. Okay, so that's
Yes, sir.
absolutely good. Your overall understanding is absolutely fantastic. There are few things here and there, but that doesn't matter considering that you are just starting. Okay, so I'm not picking on those small things, and nobody knows everything, right? Now let's go back to the two questions that you were not able to answer. So the first one is basically the risk-based testing. Now, these two questions are important. When we say risk-based testing, this becomes important when you are working in any of the projects. So what exactly risk-based testing is? It is the testing approach that you take when you have, say, less, or you want to deliver the software quickly, you have resource crunch, or there is basically the need that the software needs to go into the market very quickly. What exactly risk-based testing is? It takes risk into consideration. So say, for example, you have 10 requirements and you want to test those 10 requirements. So what you will do is you will analyze the risks associated with those requirements. Okay.
Okay.
And based on the risk, say, for example, top 3 requirements are very critical. So you will
Critical.
focus more on those. So you will, when you will start your testing, you will focus more on the test designing of those 3 requirements. And then you will come, so those will be your first criteria, critical, then the lower risk one. And then, so that's the basis of basically risk-based testing. Now, risk-based testing is a very vast and big topic, but this is just a crux of it. When somebody asks what is risk-based testing, you ensure, or risk is the key factor to go ahead and start your risk-based testing. So you analyze the risk related to a particular requirement, associate the risk, and then based on the risk, you strategize your testing. This is very short answer for that. Okay, go through and read
Yes, sir.
about risk-based testing. You will get a lot of information around that. You would have read it already, but I think you got confused, right?
No, sir, I have not read this
Okay.
before.
Just go through and read it,
I
because
heard this. Yes, sir. I heard this first time.
oh,
So
okay. Yeah, read this, because as a tester, when you go into any of the project, you will be required, even if you are not following this approach, even if you are just going through your test case designing, the requirement that you get, you will by default as a tester analyze how risky this particular feature is and how much effort you are going to put in terms of designing the test cases for that. So as a tester, you will develop that skill. Okay. So
yes,
understanding
sir.
this is very important. Now moving to the next one, which was the globalization testing. So nowadays you would have seen that like Microsoft Office can work in Hindi or English or a lot many language, right? So Office is a globalized software. Microsoft Windows is a globalized software. So if somebody is running Windows software in Windows operating system in Korea or in some other language in India, it can run on Hindi. Or so when we talk about globalization testing, it's basically ensuring that your software, if it is meant to be run in a globalized environment, whether it can
Globalization.
cater for different locales, different geographies, different cultures. Okay, like Facebook, you see, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
Facebook I can access in Marathi, I can access in Gujarati, I can access in Telugu, Hindi,
Hindi. Yes.
English,
Yes,
French,
sir.
whatever,
Got it
right?
now.
So
Yes,
So
sir.
that's basically globalization testing.
Yes, sir.
And there are two, like internationalization, localization. So you can read about that. So, but in general, just to give you a brief idea, that's basically what a globalization testing is. All right.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's pretty much it. I think we are around an hour. So it was nice. Do you have any? It was nice talking to you. Do you have any questions for me, Snehal?
No, sir, no question. I don't have any question to you.
Okay, so let's go back
I
to
just
the.
I just want sir suggestion that I have told you before that a resume about resume
Yeah.
and whatever the topics I also need to work on more as a fresher.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of your first, I'll go through this particular conversation, the questions that I have asked. Then I'll go through the topics that you need to focus, and then your resume. Okay. So overall, your approach to target the questions is absolutely good. Okay. There is no issues that I see. You just need to work a bit on how you are going to phrase your question. So when somebody asks, take a little bit of pause, think a little bit, and then start with a proper phased answer. Right. So you can mention, step one, step two, or number one, number two, number three, something like that. Right. So it comes when you will practice. Uh, Coming to the next part. So overall, your interview was good. No issues with it. There are instances where even interviewer doesn't expect you to know everything. But if you are able to answer 70%, usually whosoever I interview, if a person is able to answer 70% of my questions correct, I hire that particular person. So I do not go into 100% mode. I believe all the interviewers do similar thing. If there are people who are very picky, so exceptions are everywhere, then that's a different story. But nobody knows everything. Keep that in mind. Be confident, and you are confident. Just continue with this. In terms of the topics, so the topics that you were not able to answer, whatever questions I have asked, go and dig deeper and understand more about it. Okay, go
Yes,
through
sir.
the ISTQB foundation topics. Okay, ISTQB
Okay.
foundation is the certification. So people will say that this is not of a use, but I personally feel, and this is my personal opinion, you can disagree, but I personally feel that ISTQB foundation syllabus and the contents of it provide a very well structured approach for any fresher to get into software testing and learn software testing from very scratch. Okay, so they have
Scratch.
structured it very well. The certification is up to you. If you want to take, you can take it. I have published a complete ISTQB foundation certification tutorial. The complete course is available for
Yes, sir.
free on
I
YouTube.
know that.
Agile is also free, so that you can go through and you will be able to pass the certification. But that is something which will give you a complete understanding as a fresher to get into the software testing, because this is not, I'm saying just for the sake of it, this is what I did when I was a fresher to get into software testing 16 years ago. Okay, so I did the software testing ISTQB certification. I read all that material, did the certification, and got into software testing. So it's tried and tested for
Okay,
me.
sir.
My personal advice. Third thing around the resume, your resume needs to be improved a lot. So what I'll do is I'll send you a sample template basically. Okay,
Template.
and in that template, I'll help you, or I'll mention the key things that you need to mention. You have a lot of good things to mention in your resume. If you have knowledge,
Hmm.
go ahead and mention it in your resume. Do not just think that, because resume is the first thing that somebody will look at, right? If I
Sir.
go ahead and look at your resume and I'm a recruiter, I won't give you a call, to be very frank. Okay, so this is the first thing. Now that is an exception when I'm talking to you, that yes, I'm impressed that yes, you answered a lot of things correctly. But the first thing is resume, and somebody will talk to you, a recruiter will talk to you only if they like your resume. So that's the thing, and I'll send you something definitely
Yes.
to help you with that format and what you need to include. Okay, so that's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
much it. Any more questions?
No, sir. Sir, and thank you, sir, for conducting this mock interview session and
No,
for giving the fast instant reply.
that's absolutely fine, Snail. That's my pleasure. It has been quite a long delay for this particular interview. I mean, there were many people lined up, but then there were few people who dropped out, and you were the lucky one, basically. So that's
Oh,
absolutely my pleasure to have a chat with you, and it was absolute pleasure talking to you. Okay, so thank you, and have a nice day.